Good afternoon. I'm spot on weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. Welcome to my latest Teleconnections Discussion video for the 27th of September, 2025. And yep, it's the time of year where, we're starting to think more about pumpkin season here as we get closer and closer to the first couple days of October. So nice little shot here tonight I wanted to share with you of a pumpkin all lit up. And we're ready to get this going. So let's talk about the latest teleconnections. We're going to go ahead and kick things off by a look at the Northern Hemisphere, the global view of the Northern Hemisphere. And let's go ahead and kick things off. Okay, so again, just as a reminder, green and blue means upper level troughs. And with upper level troughs, we tend to have more stormy weather associated with them, as well as cooler temperatures. With the oranges and brown colors, that indicates upper level ridges, which are typically associated with dry weather as well as milder temperatures. So let's examine and see where these shortwave troughs and ridges are. We're looking at the 500 millibar height anomalies, 500 millibars being 18,000 feet above mean sea level. So let's take a look. Okay, so we're going to go west to east up here in the Northern Hemisphere. We see an upper level trough over the Arctic to the north of Russia, generally with an upper level ridge beneath it over Central Asia here. So we got some pretty good troughing there over the Arctic to the north of Russia and a ridge beneath it across Central Asia. There is a weak upper level trough north of Japan, followed by an upper level ridge downstream of that trough across the Central Pacific Ocean, extending north into the Bering Sea. Generally right in this location here, you can see the upper level, upper high positioned over the central North Pacific with ridging northwest from that into the Bering Sea. We see an upper level trough north of Alaska, north of the Alaska area into the Arctic Ocean, and it extends southward into the Gulf of Alaska. There is an upper level ridge over the Intermountain west of the United States, extending north into north central Canada. And then we see a closed upper level low positioned over northern Hudson Bay with ridging over the Canadian Maritimes, just to the east of the upper level low there over the northern Hudson Bay. So just to the east of that, we see upper level ridging. And then we see upper level ridging right immediately off the eastern coast of the United States with that ridging across the western Atlantic. There is a deep upper level trough stretching from Greenland, working its way south into the North Atlantic. And then we see strong upper level ridging across northwestern Europe into Norway, Sweden, and Finland, with a downstream trough positioned there into western Russia. So that pretty much sums up the examination of the short waves at 500 millibars or 18,000 feet mean sea level, above mean sea level here. A lot of troughing on the Pacific side up into the Arctic regions for sure. That's definitely noticeable in these green colors. And then again, a very strong upper level ridge there positioned over Europe itself. That kind of stands out, really sticks out. And another fairly strong ridge there up into the Bering Sea. If we look at the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, the phases and the areas of enhanced convection, MJO runs from phases 1 through phase 8. And these are the temperature composites on the left-hand side. Blue coloring indicating cooler than normal temperatures, yellow and oranges indicating above normal temperatures, and how these various MJO phases, where that convection sets up, where the rising air and the sinking air set up across the tropical Indian Ocean as well as the Pacific Ocean, matters globally to the weather downstream here across the United States. So let's go ahead and examine what's going on over here on the right. We're looking at the Jeffs V12. This goes out to the 10th of October, and this is showing the forecast for the MJO, and notice again where these blue and red lines are generally consolidated in the smaller inner circle of this MJO phase diagram, and that is indicative of non-impactful or null phase. So non-impactful MJO to the United States weather, and there's really little change. This Jeff's V12 forecast goes out to the 10th of October. So through the first 10 days of October, you see kind of where the bunching of the lines is, generally here in the smaller inner circle of the MJO phase diagram, indicating very weak phase of the MJO, minimal impact. We look over here on the left, we're looking at the CFS V2 extended bias corrected model through the 18th of October. Notice again how many of the lines are grouped in the smaller inner circle here. There is some potential for the MJO to rotate out into phase 2 on this as we get further towards the 10th of October. Over in the middle is the ECMWF MJO forecast going out to the 10th of October. Again, very similar story here. Notice where all the lines are generally bunched up at in the small inner circle, so non-impactful or very weak MJO phase. And then on the right, the BOM model, the Australian model, showing again the same old story here. For the second week in a row, the MJO is generally in a weak or a null phase, so minimal influence on U.S. weather right on through the 10th of October. We look at the El Nino Southern Oscillation, the ENSO update. The latest NOAA Coral Reef Watch daily 5-kilometer sea surface temperature anomalies I was able to pull up was from the 24th of September. And anything in the yellows and the oranges, the maroon colors indicates above normal water temperatures. Anything in the blue coloring indicates below normal water temperatures. So let's examine things. First of all, let's start off with the Southern Oscillation Index, SOI. Still coming in with the late August reading of positive 0.4. So hopefully in the next Teleconnections video, I'll have an update value from late September to update you on this. But generally positive 0.4 SOI generally indicates ENSO neutral conditions across the tropical eastern and the tropical central Pacific. We do see warmer than normal waters across the northwestern Pacific, U.S. west coast as well as northeast of Iceland toward the Norwegian Sea. And there is cooler than normal water temperatures across the tropical eastern and central Pacific Ocean. You really see here where the deepest blues are located in the tropical Pacific Ocean, though. It really stretches west of 120 degrees west longitude, centered on 150 west longitude, and the cooler than normal waters extend out to the international dateline at 180 degrees west longitude. So the focus of the La Nina developing the cooler than normal waters really seems to be more central Pacific based. We also see cooler than normal water temperatures generally to the south of Iceland and Greenland and across the North Atlantic, just to the west of the British Isles. And that's generally associated with what's known as the North Atlantic warm hole. But really, some striking things here. You see the marine heat wave out over the northwestern Pacific continuing, as well as the Sea of Japan, east of Japan as well, and then also off the U.S. West Coast. Those are the warmest waters right now across the northern hemisphere. We look at the ENSO intensity classification. Again, I show this every week just to kind of show you what the classifications are between a weak El Nino or La Nina, a moderate El Nino or La Nina, or a strong El Nino or La Nina, and then neutral conditions. And NOAA is examining the water temperature departures from normal in this Nino 3.4 region rectangular box. If we look at the latest ENSO forecast, no changes from last week's Teleconnections video, as I just updated this last week. But generally what we're looking at is odds have increased. If we look at, the bars over here on the left, as well as the model predictions over here on the right, the different dynamical and statistical models, does not matter. We're still increasing our odds for La Nina to develop, and we do expect a transition again to ENSO neutral for the upcoming winter. And then these are the percentages for the various months. SON is September, October, November. You see there's a 56% chance of a La Nina versus a 44% chance for neutral ENSO conditions. October, November, December, 60% chance probability for La Nina, only 39% for a neutral ENSO. And then November, December, January, we're still seeing pretty strong with La Nina probabilities at 59% and neutral ENSO only 40%. But then things get close again. December, January, February, La Nina probability at 50%, and ENSO neutral is now up to 46%. And then finally, January, February, and March, La Nina probability has dropped fairly drastically down to 40%, while ENSO neutral has moved up now to 55% probability. So bottom line here is the highest probability for La Nina to occur will be during the early winter, and then we're looking at a transition over to ENSO neutral conditions about January of 2026 after the new year. We look at the latest quasi-biennial oscillation, the QBO update. We see that this blue vertical bar indicates where this QBO, where is it generally located at? It's generally over here in the negative value side of this pressure and millibars vertical line. So we're looking at the QBO right now in the easterly phase, easterly descending phase. And that is expected to continue through the upcoming 2025-26 winter season. And QBO in the easterly phase generally tends to favor overall a weaker wintertime stratospheric polar vortex and favors more of a negative phase of the North Atlantic oscillation. Now let's examine the latest teleconnections themselves. We'll start with the Arctic oscillation, the AO forecast. As a refresher, over here on the left, we have an example of a negative Arctic oscillation. And generally what happens with a negative AO is we get a big dip in the jet stream across the Midwest to the East Coast. And we get a lot of cold Arctic air and this cross-polar flow to just come from Siberia over the top, north of Alaska, right on down into Canada and the United States with a negative AO. With a positive AO on the right, a little bit different. We have more of a west to east jet stream with a positive AO, so milder air across much of the lower 48. The coldest Arctic air remains bottled up over the Arctic, and with a stronger AO or a more positive AO, you get a stronger stratospheric polar vortex. Let's look at the European EPS AO 50 perturb member forecast now. Starting off, follow the green line here. The solid green line is the average of all the different ensemble members. So we're starting off with a slightly positive AO through about 28 September. Then we go slightly negative from the 29th of September to the 4th of October. And then we turn towards neutral AO conditions to even dipping slightly negative again there through the 11th of October. Examining the Euro EPS AO 50 perturb members 46-day forecast out through about the 9th of November. We start off with a slightly positive AO through the 28th of September. That'll be tomorrow. Then we go slightly negative from tomorrow, the 28th of September, through about the 5th of October. And then we go back negative from the 6th of October to the 16th of October. And then we go mainly neutral conditions from the 16th of October right on out to the 9th of November. And the NOAA Jeffs V12 AO 30 perturb member forecast showing a slightly positive AO right on through today, the 27th of September, then turning slightly negative from the 27th of September to the 2nd of October, and then transitioning to slightly positive from the 2nd to the 6th of October, and then really becoming more negative through the 12th of October. Turning our attention now to the North Atlantic oscillation, the NAO forecast. Big differences here. Negative NAO on the left, showing a very strong blocking high across the North Atlantic up to Greenland. We have digging troughs on both sides of the strong blocking high. We have one trough digging into the eastern United States, and we have another trough digging into western and northern Europe. Over on the right, with a positive NAO, look what happens. We have more of a west to east jet stream, and we generally have milder air during the winter season with a positive NAO across much of the United States. You get these weaker, little clipper type, weaker systems there to basically go from west to east across the northern United States. The coldest air remains locked up over the Arctic with a positive NAO, and you have more of a strong Aleutian low. You have the Aleutian low and the Icelandic low. In this case, it's the Icelandic low. You have a very strong Icelandic low right here across the North Atlantic. Let's examine the models now. European EPS NAO 50 perturb member forecast. We're looking at a slightly positive NAO right on through the 28th of September. Then it crashes negative from 28 September to 2 October, transitions to positive from the 2nd of October to the 11th of October. The European EPS NAO 50 perturb members 46-day forecast out to about the 9th of November shows a slightly positive NAO through about the 27th of September today. Then it turns negative from 27 September to 4 October, and then becomes slightly positive to neutral right on through the 9th of November. And then finally, the NOAA Jeffs V12 NAO 30 perturb member forecast for the NAO, showing slightly positive NAO through today, the 27th of September, transitioning negative from the 27th of September to the 2nd of October, and then going positive, pretty significantly positive on this model, the Jeffs, right on from the 2nd of October to the 8th of October, and then transitioning towards neutral between 8 and 12 October. Turning to the Pacific North American, the PNA forecast. Differences here between a positive PNA versus a negative PNA, pretty significant in the winter. With a positive PNA, you get the mildest temperatures, the highest upper level heights across the western U.S. up towards western Canada, and in some cases up towards Alaska. You get below average temperatures with a positive PNA across areas east of the Mississippi River to the east coast. You get lower heights over those same areas over the east, troughing. And on the right, we see the negative PNA, in which now we have troughing across western Canada into the western United States and cold and stormy conditions for the western U.S. And then we have mild and dry type conditions across the southeast, mid-Atlantic, and generally across much of the eastern United States. Let's look at the European EPS PNA 50 perturb member forecast. What we're looking at is a slightly negative PNA through today, the 27th of September, then becoming neutral to slightly positive right on from between 27th of September right to 5th of October, and then turning negative from 5 to 11 October. We look at the European EPS PNA 50 perturb member forecast out to 9 November. We see a slightly negative PNA through the 2nd of October, turning positive from 2 all the way to the 20th of October. It's a considerable period to be positive for the PNA. It's not strongly positive, though, just slightly positive for much of the period. Then it turns more neutral from the 20th of October to the 9th of November. And then the NOAA Jeffs V12 model for the PNA 30 perturb member forecast, showing a slightly negative PNA right on through the 28th of September, through tomorrow. And then it becomes more neutral from the 28th of September right on through the 5th of October, and then slightly negative to neutral from the 5th to the 12th of October. Let's now look at the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, the EPO forecast. And why do we care about the EPO? Well, a negative EPO here on the left shows a very strong upper high across the Northeast Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska. Milder air reaches up into southern and central Alaska with a negative EPO. You get more of a dip in the jet stream and much colder Arctic air to come down into the northern U.S., the Midwest, and a lot of times this can bleed over towards the mid-Atlantic. With a positive EPO on the right, what do we have going on here? Now we have a strong Aleutian low over higher heights across the Pacific, specifically in the area of Hawaii. And then we get more of a west to east jet stream with a positive Eastern Pacific Oscillation. The jet stream moving west to east, coldest air is going to remain up over the Arctic with a positive EPO. We look at the European EPS, EPO 50 perturb member forecast. We have a positive EPO forecasted from this model through the 3rd of October. Follow my red little laser pointer here. Positive, and then it goes slightly negative from 3 to the 8th of October, and then it really turns more sharply negative according to this model forecast from the 8th to the 11th of October. Looking at the European EPS, EPO 50 perturb member forecast, this one goes out to 9 November. We see a strongly positive EPO right on through the 4th of October, and then it starts making more of a downturn and becomes slightly negative from 4 to the 11th of October. And then we go more into positive territory from the 11th of October right on to 1 November, and then slightly negative again from 1 to 9 November. We look at the NOAA Jeffs V12 EPO 30 perturb member forecast. Let's look at C with strongly positive EPO through the 3rd of October. Then it becomes more slightly negative from the 3rd of October right on through the 12th of October. All right, so now let's take a look and see what's going on with the stratospheric polar vortex. Is it strengthening? Is it weakening? What's going on with it? We get these images courtesy of stratobserve.com. These figures are Barzakti Lawrence from NMT. Over here on the left, we're showing different color lines which represent different model types. And that's over here on the right-hand graphic. You see orange line represents the GFS forecast. The purple line is the GEOS forecast. The green line on these graphics represents the Jeffs ensemble average. The light blue line represents the Canadian model, CMC, and the JEPS, the Canadian ensemble system. Ensemble average is a blue line. The fleet numerical is the magenta or pinkish line there, their ensemble forecasting system forecast. And so let's examine to see what's happening here. So if we look at the zonal mean zonal winds here on the left-hand graphic, there's numbers here from 0 to 20 meters per second. On the bottom, on this horizontal axis, you have the dates out into the future. This is from the 21st, and initialized the 21st of September. It's the latest one I could pull. We have a very steady zonal mean zonal winds there through about the 21st of September, and then they strengthen. You notice how they increase here by this positive slope, this upward tick in the lines of these forecast models. And then we're kind of maintaining a status quo. It's not really strengthening strong. If anything, maybe slight increasing strength, but not really drastic at this point with the stratospheric polar vortex. If we look over here on the right, we're looking at the average temperatures up at about 10 hectopascals or 10 millibar level, about 60,000 feet above the ground. And notice how the temperatures are kind of diving lower and lower. And that's associated with cooling temperatures in the stratosphere. You can see the temperature readings here on the right in Kelvin. 215 to 230 Kelvin is the range on this graph. And then we have the days down here. The first two digits are the month, and the last two are the day of the month. So kind of a cooling situation in the temperatures in the stratosphere there above the Arctic area. But again, these zonal mean zonal winds, maybe a slight increase in speed, maybe some slight strengthening, but it's not looking overly impressive. We look at now and examine the latest European ensemble prediction system, the EPS. We start off over here in the upper left with what's going on presently. We see a trough, a shortwave trough positioned from southeastern Canada near the Toronto area, extending southwestward over Ohio. We have a trough axis working its way down towards Arkansas. And so we have lower heights in the blue colors here, which is generally associated with more clouds and precipitation. The orange colors indicate upper level ridges, which are associated with dry and milder weather. So you see there is a ridge, generally a ridge axis, the sawtooth line extending from Colorado working north towards south central Canada. We see some other troughs again up at the higher north latitude areas. Specifically here towards Alaska, we have a trough axis. We have a closed low south of Kodiak. And then we have another trough extending across the North Atlantic. We move forward in time here in the upper right. We show you the forecast for the 29th of September, Monday, and we see that we have a trough. This trough axis extends across the Northeast Pacific. We see there is a ridge axis extending more southeast to northwest across Iowa, Minnesota, and parts of south central Canada, associated with dry and fair weather beneath this ridge axis. And then really we see this typical Bermuda high, 594 decameter upper high over the central Atlantic. And you may notice the blue color here, that's associated with tropical activity. That's Umberto there. Bottom left is showing you the forecast for next Thursday, the 2nd of October, 2025. We see the trough is starting to work its way towards western Canada and the Pacific Northwest of the United States. The ridge has now built pretty significantly. By next Thursday morning, we see the ridge axis extending from northern Illinois up through Wisconsin, Lake Superior area up towards Hudson Bay in Canada. And then we see troughing deepening here along the New England area. And that troughing is really going to result in some cooler air surging from New England down towards the mid-Atlantic states by the end of this upcoming next week. And then over here on the far right, we're showing you the forecast. This one goes out, and I covered it up. I believe this is through the 5th of October over here on the right. It's out to hour 216, but we do see just a subtle trough here in the middle latitude westerlies, shortwave trough extending from south central Canada down through Minnesota and Iowa down towards Kansas. We have an upper level ridge, which has now shifted further east towards the Canadian Maritimes, up through New England. And we really see that polar vortex reflection at 500 millibars with the closed low there over the Arctic. So here are my final thoughts on tonight's video. The MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, remains in a very inactive or null phase. So we expect minimal influence on the United States weather through 10 October. We do see ENSO neutral conditions that are present across the tropical eastern and central Pacific. We do see the Southern Oscillation Index still at a value of positive 0.4, but we are really noticing some drops in some of these water temperatures there, specifically where I showed you more of the central tropical Pacific associated with the developing La Nina. In fact, the CDAS, the latest data I looked at, were down to minus 1.04 degrees Celsius. So 1.04 degrees Celsius below normal waters, generally in the Nino 3.4 region. For the sea surface temperature anomalies across the northern hemisphere oceans, we're seeing warmer than normal water across the North Pacific Ocean, specifically around Japan, as well as off the United States west coast. We're also seeing warmer than normal waters situated northeast of Iceland into the Norwegian Sea. There are cooler than normal waters, below normal water temperatures there located across the equatorial tropical Pacific, associated with the developing La Nina, and also over the North Atlantic to the west of the British Isles, associated with the North Atlantic wormhole. Models are indicating a slightly negative to slightly positive AO or Arctic oscillation through the 6th of October. Then more strongly negative after the 6th of October. So we'll have to really watch to see how that changes from day to day. The negative phase, the AO, that favors cooler than average temps across the eastern U.S. If the if the AO goes neutral, that generally tends to favor near average temps in a more zonal west to east jet stream with weaker, faster moving high and low pressure systems. And then if we have a positive phase of the AO, that favors above average temps across the eastern U.S. Models are also indicating a negative NAO or North Atlantic oscillation from 27th of September to 2 October, then a positive NAO from 2 to 8 October before it transitions back towards neutral. Now, a negative phase of the NAO would favor troughing along the eastern seaboard, cooler than average temps there. That would also be associated typically with a blocking upper high or ridge over the northwest Atlantic towards Greenland. A neutral phase, the NAO, favors near average temperatures across the eastern U.S. and a lack of upper level blocking patterns. In a positive phase, the NAO favors above average temperatures across the eastern U.S. Models are also indicating a mainly neutral Pacific North American pattern, PNA, through the 12th of October, and that neutral PNA tends to favor near average temperatures across the eastern United States. And then models are indicating a positive EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation, through 3 October, and then it turns slightly negative from 3 to 8 October, and then dives more sharply negative from 8 to 11 October. A positive EPO favors upper air pattern where we see an upper level trough across Alaska and the Bering Sea, with downstream ridging and warmer than average temps from the northern plains to the east coast. A negative EPO, on the other hand, favors colder than average temps from the northern plains to the east coast of the United States, more of the troughing in these locations associated with those colder than average temps. And models are indicating ever so slightly strengthening stratospheric polar vortex in early October, slightly increasing zonal mean zonal winds. It's not super strong, the intensity of the winds increasing. We are seeing cooling stratospheric temperatures, and we expect that this time of year. Strengthening stratospheric polar vortex as the latitudinal temperature gradient continues to increase between the poles and lower latitudes. And then finally, these are my final results for the eastern United States, what we're expecting based on the assessment of all the teleconnections. We're expecting a slightly negative to slightly positive AO. And that range between slightly negative and slightly positive generally favors near average temps through the 6th of October. Now, a negative NAO will favor through the 2nd of October is going to favor cooler than average temps, that troughing that we're kind of seeing on the model runs here for late next week. The 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th specifically, we're seeing a dip in the jet stream and more cooler temperatures from New England down to the mid-Atlantic. A neutral PNA generally tends to favor neither above or below average temperatures. So we have the neutral PNA on the table this week. The ENSO neutral conditions are in place. That favors near average temps for the eastern United States. And just another reminder again, the IRI plumes are indicating a La Nina forecast as we head from fall into the winter season. So overall, what we expect is with that negative NAO kind of being a more of a dominant teleconnection, we're expecting cooler than average temperatures by late next week. But really the transition day for the mid-Atlantic is about the 1st. But really, 1 to 5 October for the eastern United States as a whole, we've seen upper trough digging down along the eastern seaboard with cooler fall-like air spilling south from eastern Canada. So just keep that in mind. If you're a fan of fall weather, things are looking a little bit more up. We are seeing signs trending toward a more negative AO. Now this is interesting. We'll have to watch the trends on this. They're constantly changing, but we are seeing signs of a more negative AO and a negative EPO beyond the 6th of October. Now, if those two were to occur simultaneously, they may both be enough in combination to result in a deeper upper level trough or a dip in the jet stream into the eastern United States, resulting in more chilly early October weather. And then the stratospheric polar vortex, not really playing much into the weather across the middle latitudes just yet, as it slowly continues to strengthen with cooling of the stratospheric temperatures. All right, that wraps up my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy running through the teleconnections with everyone and kind of just breaking down what these teleconnections mean for our weather and what kind of weather would we expect based on these teleconnections for the next 7 to 10 days. And that's why I do these weekly discussions. So hopefully you enjoy the videos. And I'm kind of putting things on hold right now with my latest video. I have it ready to go, but honestly, we've seen some milder temperatures in the east this past week here to kind of round out the last full week of September. And I'm waiting to see what these temp anomalies are for September as a whole come 30 September. So I'm holding out right now on the next video, which I had ready to go, in which I looked at cooler than normal August and September's back-to-back cooler than normal months there and what the following winter held. So I'm going to hold off on that for right now because the month of September might actually turn out to be closer to average based on how warm things were across the mid-Atlantic here this past week. So just hang out, and I'll have more videos here coming up in the future. And again, I certainly hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it each week. Until next time, everybody, take care and God bless.